The immigration plan is out there on this. The senators introduced it last week, I think it was, the bipartisan plan. I have specific questions. Do you have any general observations about the immigration plan?
Well, I think we've got to do something. I think it's not just an 11 million population here, but it's an economic issue. It's something that's festering, and so, I hope we can keep the discussion and we can get something done here. But that remains to be seen.
Do you support the concept that's in the framework, and that is to have either amnesty or a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million illegals who are here now?
I have not supported that in the past, and in this format, I don't know that I can support it. I think that the enforcement issues are something that need to be answered first to stop the flow. I've said numerous times to numerous groups that what is it about illegal immigration that doesn't click when you hear the word illegal before it? But I recognize that 11 million people, we can't send them all back, and as long as we keep them in our country, they're not above board paying taxes, productive citizens in the way that we need them to be, and so that presents a dilemma.
So where do we go? I mean, I understand that, and I had Congressman Ray Hall on last week, and he seemed fundamentally against it because he said it's just an amnesty program. We tried amnesty in 1986. It didn't work because there was no follow-up after that. Specifically, if you look at the plan, and I know there's a lot of devil in the details there, that says, first, you got to secure the border. Second, you have to let those who are going about the process legally be in front of the line. And then third, those who are here illegally would have to go to the back of the line, but they would get green cards on day one. I know there's a lot more to it than that. That seems to be some of the key principles. So are you fundamentally against it because of one or several of those principles, or what?
Well, I mean, I think the first stop the flow, number one, of illegal immigrants flowing into the country. I mean, that has to be number one. The fairness issue that I've argued is, how can you give 11 million folks who have been here illegally a front row seat behind people, in front of people that are trying to get here legally? So if that can solve that problem, and put those who are trying to legally and going through all the, I mean, I go to the immigration, to the citizenship ceremonies, and there's nothing. It is, if you want to have a great day, go see these families with the big smiles on their face that have achieved this. But the same thing is, I can't see giving people immediate access that a green card gives you in terms of services, in terms of ability to access everything that tax-paying citizens have been paying for years when they've been here illegally. I understand there are issues with children that were born here or that came here when they were very young. So I know there's all tentacles to this.
Yeah, it really does get pretty complicated, as you say, because if day one you get the green card, that's you're not a citizen, and you still have a long way to go to be a citizen, but that's pretty significant. You're no longer illegal at that point if you have a green card. So.
Right.
I mean,
right, and you're probably paying taxes when you're working, because a green card gives you the ability to work. But other questions, I think, can you access housing programs? Can you access social welfare programs? I mean, these are all the kinds of things that we need to think about. Mm-hmm. And also the thing that troubles me is we've got 11 million illegals here. How many of them are counter to our society? They're either A, in our prisons, or B, perpetrating crimes or of other nature. I'm not saying that's the vast majority of them by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't know why we don't send those, deport those. I mean, why are we, harboring folks who are not only here illegally, but are committing illegal acts at the same time?
Congresswoman Shelley Moore Capito is with us, Republican from the 2nd District. The president is going to Minnesota today to lobby on behalf of the gun control measure. It's generally believed that any measure that would outlaw certain kinds of weapons is not going to pass, probably would not pass the Senate, and certainly would not pass the House. One thing that people are talking about is universal background checks. Do you support or oppose universal background checks?
Well, I don't think that that's going to solve our problem. I mean, I think that there is a gun show loophole that is talked about quite frequently. I think we need to take a look at that. But, we've got, in West Virginia, I mean, my phone is on fire in terms of folks who are really concerned about losing their constitutional rights, not just here but in other areas, but particularly here. And I'm going to hold strong on that. We do have issues with mental health, with the violent societies that the media. These are, let's look comprehensively at these things. We'll see what plan comes over from the Senate, but I don't think it's going to include a lot of what the president's talking about right now, because it is an infringement, and I think a lot of representatives on both sides of the aisle are feeling this from their constituencies.
Does that mean that you oppose expanding? Does that mean you oppose universal background checks?
Not necessarily. I think we need to look and see where the argument goes. I mean, if there is I understand the gun show loopholes exist, but then certain people would argue it doesn't exist. I understand that there are records that have never been entered into the system. We need to enforce to make sure the records are entered into the system, and that folks with mental illness or previous crimes or whatever are unable to access the weapon. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to talk about here. I just want to see how it actually comes out. When you say universal background checks, what does that really mean? And before I would commit one way or the other, I'd have to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I think, to me, and again, these things always get down to the specifics. To me, it would mean, like right now we have background checks, but if it's a private seller, not somebody who's federally licensed, then they don't have to go through a background check. They show ID, but don't go through background check. So and some say it's a loophole, some say it's not a loophole, but the point being that there are private transactions not subjected to the background check. And I think what the President's talking about, I think what Joe Manchin's talking about, is that everybody would be subjected to the same kind of check, with some exclusions. Like if I give, if you give a gun to your son, then that would not be subjected to a background check. But if you went to a gun show or any other private dealer and said, I want to buy a gun, then there would be a background check.
Well, I mean, I think we need to make sure that guns aren't getting in the hands of the wrong people. And if strengthening the background check through private dealers is the only way that we can achieve that, I think we ought to look at it. But I can't commit to it not knowing exactly how that would roll out.
One of the other provisions of that, Congresswoman, I believe, would be, and I don't think there's going to be any outlaw of any particular guns. I don't think that's going to happen. But maybe limiting the size of magazines could happen. Mm-hmm. Do you support any limitation on any magazine size?
At this point, I do not. But here again, I want to learn more about it. What's the difference between a 10 clip and a 30 clip? Is it significant enough to warrant for the greater protection of the greater population? I mean, these are the fundamental constitutional questions I think that you would look at if you're going to limit any kind of arms bearing. And so I just want to learn more about that, but at this point I would say no, I would not support that.
Again, alluding to what you talked about earlier, you said your phones are burning up, and on this, do you have any personal experience or personal conviction on the Second Amendment and on gun rights, or are you, in this case, more responding to what you think your constituents want?
Well, this has been an evolution for me, quite frankly, because my parents, they didn't hunt. My dad was not a hunter. We did not have guns in our home growing up. I mean, it wasn't an anti-gun environment, but it just wasn't part of our everyday lives. And so, when it's not a part of your everyday life, you learn about it. And when I first ran in 2000, that's when I really clued in and understood more about the fundamental Second Amendment right of liberty to bear arms. I met a lot of people, and I kind of thought, well, these are going to be folks that are maybe on the fringe or something, that are rabid gun rights activists. No, they're grandparents, they're grandchildren, they're lawyers, doctors, coal miners, the whole gamut. And that's where I think became much more strengthened in my deep belief of the constitutional right to bear arms.